I'm happy to tell you there's very little in this world that I believe in. Listening to the comedians who comment on political, social, and cultural issues, I notice that most of their material reflects kind of an underlying belief that somehow things were better once, and with just a little effort we could set them right again. They're looking for solutions and rooting for particular results, and I think that limits the tone and substance of what they say. They're talented and funny people, but they're really nothing more than cheerleaders attached to a specific wished-for outcome. I don't feel so confined. I frankly don't give a fuck how it all turns out in this country, or anywhere else for that matter. I think the human game was up a long time ago when the high priests and traders took over. And now we're just playing out the string. And that is, of course, precisely what I find so amusing. The slow circling of the drain by a once promising species and the sappy, ever more desperate belief in this country that there is actually some sort of an American dream which has merely been misplaced. The decay and disintegration of this culture is astonishingly amusing if you're emotionally detached from it. And I've always viewed it from a safe distance, knowing I don't belong. Doesn't include me, it never has. No matter how you care to define it, I do not identify with the local group. Planet, species, race, nation, state, religion, party, union, club, association, neighborhood improvement committee. I have no interest in any of it. I love and treasure individuals as I meet them. I loathe and despise the groups they identify with and belong to. So if you hear something in this book that sounds like advocacy of a particular political point of view, please reject the notion. My interest in issues is merely to point out how badly we're doing, not to suggest a way we might do better. Don't confuse me with those who cling to hope. I enjoy describing how things are. I have no interest in how they ought to be. Hello. We're the ones who control your lives. We make the decisions that affect all of you. Isn't it interesting to know that those who run your lives would have the nerve to tell you about it in this manner? Suffer, you fools. We know everything you do, and we know where you go. What do you think the cameras are for? And the global positioning satellites? And the Social Security numbers? You belong to us. And it can't be changed. Sign your petitions, walk your picket lines, bring your lawsuits, cast your votes, and write those stupid letters to whomever you please. You won't change a thing. Because we control your lives, and we have plans for you. Go back to sleep. I think many years ago an advanced civilization intervened with us genetically and gave us just enough intelligence to develop dangerous technology, but not enough intelligence to use it wisely. Then they sat back to watch the fun, kind of like a human zoo. And you know what? They're getting their money's worth. You know what America lacks? A present. America has no now. We're reluctant to acknowledge the present. I guess it's too embarrassing. Instead, we reach into the past. Our culture is composed of sequels, reruns, remakes, revivals, reissues, re-releases, recreations, reenactments, adaptations, anniversaries, memorabilia, oldies radio, and nostalgia record collections. World War II has been refought on television so many times the Germans and Japanese are now drawing residuals. Of course, being essentially full of shit, we sometimes feel the need to dress up this past preoccupation, as with pathetic references to reruns as encore presentations. Even instant replay is a form of token nostalgia, a brief visit to the immediate past for re-examination, before slapping it onto a highlight video for further review and re-review on into the indefinite future. This yestermania of ours includes fantasy baseball camps, where aging sad sacks pay money to catch baseballs thrown by men who were once their heroes. It's part of the fascination with sports memorabilia, a memory industry, and it's so lucrative it has attracted counterfeiters. In this case, the age of hyphens, we are truly retro-Americans. And our television newscasts not only reflect this condition, they feed it. Everything they report is twisted into some reference to the past. If there's going to be a summit meeting, you'll be told all about the last 6 summit meetings. If there's a big earthquake, they'll do a story about big earthquakes of the past. If there's a mine disaster, you'll hear about every mine disaster since the inception of mining. They're obsessed with looking back. I swear, I actually heard this next thing during a newscast as the anchorman went to a commercial break. He said, "Still ahead, a look back." Honest, he said it. Hurricane Hugo 1 year later. Why? The anniversary of the Exxon Valdez oil spill. For what reason? The anniversary of the Bay of Pigs, Pan Am Flight 103, the hostages in Iran, the fall of the Berlin Wall, VJ Day, VE Day, Vietnam. Who gives a fuck? Bugs Bunny's 50th birthday, Lassie's 55th, the Golden Jubilee of Gone with the Wind, the start of the Korean War, Barbie celebrates her 35th, the 25th anniversary of the New York blackout, Bambi turns 50. Shit, I didn't even like Bambi when I was supposed to. How much do I care now? There's really no harm, I guess, in reviewing the past from time to time. Knowing where you've been is part of knowing where you are and all that happy horse shit. But the American media have an absolute fixation on this. They rob us of the present by insisting on the past. If they were able, I'm sure they would pay equal attention to the future. Trouble is they don't have any film on it. And so, on television news, there is oddly very little emphasis on the present, on today's actual news. The present exists only in 30-second stories built around 8-second sound bites. Remember, sound bite is their phrase. That's what they give you, just a bite. No chewing, no digestion, no nourishment. Malnutrition. Another way they avoid the present moment is to look ahead on their own schedules. The television news industry seems to revolve around what's coming next. Still to come, just ahead, up next. Coming up this half hour. More to come, stay with us. Still ahead, also later. They even preview what's going to happen as little as 1 hour later. During the 5 o'clock news, the empty-headed prick who does the 5 o'clock news will suddenly say, "Here's a look at what's coming up on the 6 o'clock news." Then the empty-headed prick who does the 6 o'clock news will appear in shirt sleeves in the newsroom to create the illusion of actual work and tell you about several stories that the empty-headed prick who does the 5 o'clock news should already have told you about if he were really a newsman. And so it goes around the clock. On the 5 o'clock news, they tell you about the 6 o'clock news. At 6 o'clock, they tell you about 11. At 11, they plug the morning news. The morning man promos the noontime lady, and sure enough, a little later afternoon, here comes that empty-headed prick from the 5 o'clock news to tell you what he's going to do on the 5 o'clock news. You know, if a guy were paranoid, he might not be blamed for thinking that the people who run things don't want you dwelling too much on the present. Because keep in mind, the news media are not independent. They're a sort of bulletin board and public relations firm for the ruling class, the people who run things. Those who decide what news you will or will not hear are paid by and tolerated purely at the whim of those who hold economic power. If the parent corporation doesn't want you to know something, it won't be on the news. Period. Or at the very least, it will be slanted to suit them and then barely followed up. Enjoy your snooze, folks. Where did this sudden fear of germs come from in this country? Have you noticed this? The media constantly doing stories about all the latest infections. Salmonella, E. coli, hantavirus, bird flu, now they have West Nile fever. And Americans panic easily, so now everybody's running around scrubbing this and spraying that and overcooking their food and repeatedly washing their hands, trying to avoid all contact with germs. It's ridiculous, and it goes to ridiculous lengths. In prisons, and this is true, in prisons, before they give you a lethal injection, they swab your arm with alcohol. It's true. Well, they don't want you to get an infection. And you can see their point. Wouldn't want some guy to go to hell and be sick. It would take a lot of the sport out of the whole execution. Fear of germs. What a bunch of pussies. You can't even get a decent hamburger anymore. They cook the shit out of everything now because everybody's afraid of food poisoning. Hey, where's your sense of adventure? Take a fucking chance. You know how many people die from food poisoning in this country every year? 9,000, that's all. It's a minor risk. Take a fucking chance. Bunch of goddamn pussies. Besides, what do you think you have an immune system for? It's for killing germs. But it needs practice. It needs germs to practice on. So if you kill all the germs around you and live a completely sterile life, then when germs do come along, you're not gonna be prepared. And never mind ordinary germs. What are you gonna do when some super virus comes along that turns your vital organs into liquid shit? I'll tell you what you're gonna do. You're gonna get sick, you're gonna die, and you're gonna deserve it because you're fucking weak and you got a fucking weak immune system. Now, I'm going to tell you a true story about immunization. When I was a little boy in New York City in the 1940s, we swam in the Hudson River, and it was filled with raw sewage. Okay? We swam in raw sewage. You know, to cool off. And at that time, the big fear was polio. Thousands of kids died from polio every year. But you know something? In my neighborhood, no one ever got polio. No one, ever. You know why? Because we swam in raw sewage. It strengthened our immune systems. The polio never had a prayer. We were tempered in raw shit. So personally, I never take any special precautions against germs. I don't shy away from people who sneeze and cough. I don't wipe off the telephone. I don't cover the toilet seat. And if I drop food on the floor, I pick it up and eat it. I eat it, even if I'm at a sidewalk cafe. In Calcutta, the poor section, on New Year's morning during a soccer riot. And you know something? In spite of all of that so-called risky behavior, I never get infections, folks. I just don't get them. I don't get colds, I don't get flu, I don't get food poisoning, and I don't get headaches or upset stomachs. And you know why? Because I got a good, strong immune system, and it gets a lot of practice. My immune system is equipped with the biological equivalent of fully automatic military assault rifles with night vision and laser scopes. And we have recently acquired phosphorus grenades, cluster bombs, and anti-personnel fragmentation mines. So, when my white blood cells are on patrol, reconnoitering my bloodstream, seeking out strangers and other undesirables, if they see any suspicious-looking germs of any kind, they don't fuck around. They whip out the weapons, wax the motherfucker, and deposit the unlucky fellow directly into my colon. Directly into my colon. There's no nonsense. There's no Miranda warning. There's none of that 3 strikes and you're out shit. First offense, bam, into the colon you go. And speaking of my colon, I want you to know I don't automatically wash my hands every time I go to the bathroom. Can you deal with that? Sometimes I do. Sometimes I don't. You know when I wash my hands? When I shit on them. That's the only time. And you know how often that happens? Tops. 2-3 times a week. Tops. Maybe a little more frequently over the holidays. You know what I mean? And I'll tell you something else, my well-scrubbed friends. You don't always need a shower every day. Did you know that? It's overkill. Unless you work out, or work outdoors, or for some reason come in intimate contact with huge amounts of filth and garbage every day, you don't always need a shower. All you really need to do is to wash the 4 key areas: armpits, asshole, crotch, and teeth. Got that? The hooker's bath. Armpits, asshole, crotch, and teeth. In fact, you can save yourself a whole lot of time if you simply use the same brush on all 4 areas. At some point in every stage show I do, I take a sip of water and I ask the audience, how's the water here? I haven't gotten a positive response yet. Not one. Last year, I was in about 100 different cities. Not one audience was able to give me a positive answer. Nobody trusts their water supply. Nobody. And that amuses me, because it means the system is beginning to collapse, beginning to break down. I enjoy chaos and disorder, not just because they help me professionally, but they're also my hobby. I'm an entropy buff. In high school, when I first heard of entropy, I was attracted to it immediately. They said that in nature, all systems are breaking down. And I thought, what a wonderful thing. Perhaps I can make some small contribution to this process myself. And of course, it's not just true of nature, it's true of society as well. If you look carefully, you can see that the social structure is just beginning to break down, just beginning to come apart at the seams. And what I like about that is that it makes the news on television more exciting. I watch the news for only one thing: entertainment. That's all I want. You know my favorite thing on television? Bad news. Accidents, disasters, catastrophes, explosions, fires. I want to see shit being destroyed and bodies flying around. I'm not interested in the budget. I don't care about tax negotiations. I don't want to know what country the Pope is in. But show me a burning hospital with people on crutches jumping off the roof and I'm a happy guy. I want to see a paint factory blowing up, an oil refinery explode, and a tornado hit a church on Sunday. I want to be told there's a guy running through the Kmart shooting at customers with an automatic weapon. I want to see thousands of people in the street killing policemen, hear about a nuclear meltdown in a big city, find out the stock market dropped 4,000 points in one day. I want to see people under pressure. Sirens, flames, smoke, bodies, graves being filled, parents weeping, my kind of TV. Exciting shit. I just want to see some entertainment. That's the kind of guy I am. You know what I like most? Big chunks of steel, concrete, and fiery wood falling out of the sky, and people running around trying to get out of the way. Exciting shit. And at least I admit it, folks, you know? Most people won't admit these feelings. Most people see something like that, they say, "Oh, isn't that awful?" Bullshit, lying asshole. You love it and you know it. Explosions are fun, and the closer the explosion is to your house, the more fun it is. Have you ever noticed that? Sometimes an announcer comes on television and says, 6,000 people were killed in an explosion today. And you say, where? He says, in Pakistan. You say, fuck Pakistan. Too far away to be fun. But if he says it happened in your hometown, you say, whoa, hot shit, Dave. Come on, let's go down and look at the bodies. I love bad news. Doesn't bother me. The more bad news there is, the faster this system collapses. I'm glad the water sucks. You know what I do about it? I drink it. I fucking drink it. You see, I'm not one of those people who worries about everything. Do you have people around you like that? The country's full of them now. People walking around all day worried about everything. Worried about the air, the water, the soil, pesticides, food additives, carcinogens, radon, asbestos. Worried about saving endangered species. Let me tell you about endangered species. Saving endangered species is just one more arrogant human attempt to control nature. That's what got us in trouble in the first place. Interfering with nature. Meddling. Doesn't anybody understand that? And as far as endangered species are concerned, it's a phony issue. Over 90% of all the species that ever lived on this planet are gone. They're extinct. We didn't kill them. They just disappeared. That's what species do. They appear and they disappear. It's nature's way. Irrespective of our behavior, species vanish at the rate of 25 a day. Let them go gracefully. Stop interfering. Leave nature alone. Haven't we done enough damage? We're so self-important, so arrogant. Everybody's going to save something now. Save the trees, save the bees, save the whales, save the snails. And the supreme arrogance, save the planet. Are these people kidding? Save the planet? We don't even know how to take care of ourselves. We haven't learned how to care for one another. We're going to save the fucking planet? I'm getting tired of that shit. I'm tired of fucking Earth Day. And I'm tired of these self-righteous environmentalist white bourgeois liberals who think the only thing wrong with this country is that there aren't enough bike paths, trying to make the world safe for their repulsive Volvos. Besides, environmentalists don't give a shit about the planet anyway. Not really. Not in the abstract. You know what they're interested in? A clean place to live. Their own habitat. That's all. They're worried that sometime in the future they might be personally inconvenienced. Narrow, unenlightened self-interest doesn't impress me. And by the way, there's nothing wrong with the planet in the first place. The planet is fine. The people are fucked. Compared with the people, the planet is doing great. It's been here over 4 billion years. Did you ever think about that? The planet has been here 4.5 billion years. And we've been here for what? 100,000? And we've only been engaged in heavy industry for a little over 200 years. 200 versus 4.5 billion. And we have the nerve, the conceit to think that somehow we're a threat? That somehow we're going to put this beautiful little blue-green ball in jeopardy? Believe me, the planet has put up with much worse than us. It's been through earthquakes, volcanoes, plate tectonics, solar flares, sunspots, magnetic storms, pole reversals, planetary floods, worldwide fires, tidal waves, wind and water erosion, cosmic rays, ice ages, and hundreds of thousands of years of bombardment by comets, asteroids, and meteors. And people think a few plastic bags and aluminum cans are going to make a difference? The planet isn't going anywhere, folks. We are. We're going away. Pack your shit. We're going away. And we won't leave much of a trace. Thank God for that. Nothing left. Maybe a little styrofoam. The planet will be here and we'll be gone. Another failed mutation. Another closed-end biological mistake. The planet will shake us off like a bad case of fleas, and it will heal itself, because that's what the planet does. It's a self-correcting system. The air and water and earth will recover and be renewed, and if plastic is really not degradable, well, most likely the planet will incorporate it into a new paradigm. The Earth plus plastic. Earth doesn't share our prejudice against plastic. Plastic came out of the Earth. She probably sees it as one of her many children. In fact, it could be the reason the Earth allowed us to be spawned in the first place. It wanted plastic and didn't know how to make it. It needed us. That could be the answer to our age-old question. Why are we here? Plastic, assholes. And so our job is done. The plastic is here. We can now be phased out. And I think that's already begun, don't you? I mean, to be fair, the planet probably sees us as a mild threat, something to be dealt with. And I'm sure it can defend itself in the manner of a large organism, the way a beehive or an ant colony would muster a defense. I'm sure the planet will think of something. What would you be thinking if you were the planet, trying to defend yourself against this pesky, troublesome species? Let's see, what might I try? Viruses might be good. These humans seem vulnerable to viruses, and viruses are tricky, always mutating and developing new strains when new medicines or vaccines are introduced. And perhaps the first virus I try could be one that compromises their immune systems, a human immunodeficiency virus that makes them vulnerable to other infections that come along. And perhaps this virus could be spread sexually, making them reluctant to engage in the act of reproduction, further reducing their numbers. Well, I guess it's a poetic notion, but it's a start, and I can dream, can't I? No, folks, I don't worry about the little things, bees, trees, whales, snails. I don't worry about them. I think we're part of a much greater wisdom, greater than we will ever understand, a higher order. Call it what you like. I call it the big electron. The big electron. It doesn't punish, it doesn't reward, and it doesn't judge. It just is. And so are we, for a little while. See ya. One phrase that comes up quite a bit in abortion discussions is sanctity of life. Well, what about that? Do you think there's such a thing as sanctity of life? Personally, I think it's a bunch of shit. Who says life is sacred? God? Great. But if you read your history, you know that God is one of the leading causes of death, and has been for thousands of years. Hindus, Muslims, Christians, Jews, all taking turns killing one another because God told them it was a good idea. The sword of God, the blood of the Lamb, vengeance is mine. Millions of dead people, all because they gave the wrong answer to the God question. Do you believe in God? No. Bam! Dead. How about you? Do you believe in God? Yes. Do you believe in my God? No. Bam! Dead. My God has a bigger dick than your God. For thousands of years, all the bloodiest and most brutal wars have been based on religious hatred, which of course is fine with me. Anytime holy people are killing one another, I'm a happy guy. But please, don't kill each other and then give me that shit about sanctity of life. Even if there were such an absurd thing, I don't think you can blame it on God. You know where the sanctity of life comes from? We made it up. You know why? Because we're alive. Self-interest. Living people have a strong incentive to promote the idea that somehow life is sacred. You don't see Bing Crosby running around talking about this shit, do you? You don't hear much from Mussolini on the subject. And what's the latest from JFK? Not a goddamn thing. You know why? Because JFK, Mussolini, and Bing Crosby are all fucking dead. They're fucking dead, and dead people give less than a shit about the sanctity of life. The only people who care about it are the living. So the whole thing grows out of a biased point of view. It's a self-serving, man-made bullshit story. One of those things we tell ourselves in order to feel noble. Life is sacred. Makes us feel good. But let me ask you this. If everything that ever lived is dead, and everything alive is going to die, where does the sacred part come in? Can you help me on that? Because even with all we preach about the sanctity of life, we don't practice it. Look at what we kill. Mosquitoes and flies because they're pests. Lions and tigers because it's fun. Chickens and pigs because we're hungry. And people. We kill people because they're pests. And because it's fun. And here's something else I noticed. Apparently the sanctity of life doesn't apply to cancer cells, does it? You rarely see a bumper sticker that says, "Save the tumors," or "I break for advanced melanoma." No. Viruses, molds, mildew, maggots, fungus, weed, intestinal worms, E. coli, the crabs, nothing sacred about those things. Just us. So at best, the sanctity of life is a selective thing. We choose which forms of life we feel are sacred, and we get to kill the rest. Pretty neat deal. You know how we got it? We made the whole thing up. Same way we made up the death penalty. The sanctity of life and the death penalty. We're such a versatile species. In the midst of all my bitching, you might have noticed that I never complain about politicians. I leave that to other people. There's no shortage of volunteers. Everyone complains about politicians. Everyone says they suck. But where do people think these politicians come from? They don't fall out of the sky. They don't pass through a membrane from a separate reality. They come from American homes, American families, American schools, American churches, and American businesses, and they're elected by American voters. This is what our system produces, folks. This is the best we can do. Let's face it, we have very little to work with in this country. Garbage in, garbage out. Ignorant citizens elect ignorant leaders. It's as simple as that. And term limits don't help. All you do is get a brand new bunch of ignorant leaders. So maybe it's not the politicians who suck. Maybe it's something else. Like the public. That would be a nice, realistic campaign slogan for somebody, wouldn't it? The public sucks. Elect me. Put the blame where it belongs. On the people. Because if everything is really the fault of politicians, then where are all the bright, honest, intelligent Americans who are ready to step in and replace them? Where are these people hiding? The truth is, we don't have people like that. Everyone's at the mall scratching his balls and buying sneakers with lights in them and complaining about the politicians. For myself, I've solved this political dilemma in a very direct way. On Election Day, I stay home. 2 reasons. First of all, voting is meaningless. This country was bought and paid for a long time ago. That empty shit they shuffle around and repackage every 4 years doesn't mean a thing. Second, I don't vote because I firmly believe that if you vote, you have no right to complain. I know some people like to twist that around. They say, if you don't vote, you have no right to complain. But where's the logic in that? Think it through. If you vote and you elect dishonest, incompetent politicians, and they screw things up, then you're responsible for what they've done. You voted them in. You caused the problem. You have no right to complain. I, on the other hand, who did not vote, who in fact did not even leave the house on Election Day, am in no way responsible for what these politicians have done and have every right to complain about the mess you created, which I had nothing to do with. Why can't people see that? Now, I realized recently you folks had another one of those really swell presidential elections that you treasure so much. That was nice. I'm sure you had a good time, and I'm sure that everyone's life has now improved. But I'm happy to tell you that on Election Day, I stayed home. And I did essentially what you did. The only difference is when I got finished masturbating, I had something to show for it. I make fun of people who are religious because I think they're fundamentally weak. But I want you to know that on a personal level, when it comes to believing in God, I tried. I really, really tried. I tried to believe that there's a God who created us in his own image, loves us very much, and keeps a close eye on things. I tried to believe it. But I gotta tell you, the longer you live, and the more you look around, the more you realize something is fucked up. Something is wrong. War, disease, death, destruction, hunger, filth, poverty, torture, crime, corruption, and the ice-capades. Something is definitely wrong. If this is the best God can do, I am not impressed. Results like these do not belong on the resume of a supreme being. This is the kind of stuff you'd expect from an office temp with a bad attitude. In any well-managed universe, this guy would have been out on his all-powerful ass a long time ago. So if there is a God, if there is, I think reasonable people might agree he's at least incompetent, and maybe, just maybe, he doesn't give a shit, which I admire in a person, and which would explain a lot of his results. So rather than becoming just another mindless religious robot, blindly believing that everything is in the hands of some spooky, incompetent father figure who doesn't give a shit, I decided to look around for something else to worship. Something I could really count on, and immediately I thought of the sun. It happened in an instant. Overnight, I became a sun worshiper. Well, not overnight, you can't see the sun in the dark, but first thing the next morning, I became a sun worshiper. For several reasons. First of all, I can see the sun, okay? Unlike some other gods I could mention, I can actually see the sun. I'm big on that. If I can see something, I don't know, it kind of helps the credibility. Every day I can see the sun as it gives me everything I need. Heat, light, food, flowers in the park, reflections on the lake, an occasional skin cancer, but hey, at least there are no crucifixions. And we sun worshippers don't go around killing other people simply because they don't agree with us. Sun worship is fairly simple. There's no mystery, no miracles, no pageantry, no one asks for money, there are no songs to learn, and we don't have a special building where we all gather once a week to compare clothing. And the best thing about the sun, it never tells me I'm unworthy. It doesn't tell me I'm a bad person who needs to be saved. Hasn't said an unkind word. Treats me fine. So, I worship the sun. But I don't pray to the sun. You know why? Because I wouldn't presume on our friendship. It's not polite. I've often thought people treat God rather rudely. Trillions and trillions of prayers every day, asking and pleading and begging for favors. Do this, give me that, I need this, I want that. And most of this praying takes place on Sunday, his day off. It's not nice, and it's no way to treat a friend. But still, people do pray, and they pray for many different things. And that's okay with me. I say pray for anything you want. Pray for anything. But what about the divine plan? Remember that, the divine plan? A long time ago, God came up with a divine plan. He gave it a lot of thought. He decided it was a good plan, and he put it into practice. And for billions and billions of years, the divine plan has been doing just fine. Now you come along and pray for something. Well, suppose the thing you're praying for isn't in God's divine plan. What do you want him to do? Change his plan? Just for you? Isn't that sort of arrogant? It's a divine plan. What good is being God if every rundown schmuck with a $2 prayer book can come along and fuck with your plan? And here's another problem you might encounter. Suppose your prayers aren't answered. What do you do then? What do you say? Well, it's God's will. Thy will be done. Fine. But if it's God's will, and he's going to do what he wants to anyway, why bother praying in the first place? Doesn't it seem like a big waste of time? Couldn't you just skip the praying part and go straight to his will? It's all very confusing to me. So to get around all this, I decided to worship the sun. But as I said, I don't pray to the sun. You know who I pray to? Joe Pesci. 2 reasons. First of all, I think he's a pretty good actor. To me, that counts. Second, he looks like a guy who can get things done. Joe doesn't fuck around. In fact, he came through on a couple of things that God was having trouble with. For years, I asked God to do something about my noisy neighbor's barking dog. Nothing happened. But Joe Pesci, he straightened that shit out with one visit. It's amazing what you can accomplish with a simple piece of athletic equipment. So I've been praying to Joe for a couple of years now, and I've noticed something. I've noticed that all the prayers I used to offer to God and all the prayers I now offer to Joe Pesci are being answered at about the same 50% rate. Half the time I get what I want, half the time I don't. Same as God, 50-50. Same as the 4-leaf clover, the horseshoe, the wishing well, and the rabbit's foot. Same as the Mojo Man or the Voodoo Lady who tells you your fortune by squeezing a goat's testicles. It's all the same 50-50. So just pick a superstition you like, sit back, make a wish, and enjoy yourself. And for those of you who look to the Bible for its moral lessons and literary qualities, I have a couple of other stories I'd like to recommend. You might want to try The Three Little Pigs. That's a good one. It has a nice happy ending. And there's always Little Red Riding Hood, although it does have that one X-rated part where the big bad wolf actually eats the grandmother, which I didn't care for. And finally, I've always drawn a great deal of moral comfort from Humpty Dumpty. The part I like best: all the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty Dumpty back together again. That's because there is no Humpty Dumpty, folks. In Los Angeles, there's a hotline for people in denial. So far, no one has called. What is all this nonsense about angels? Do you realize 3 out of 4 Americans now believe in angels? What are they, fucking stupid? Has everybody lost their goddamn minds? Angels, my ass. You know what I think it is? I think it's a massive collective chemical flashback from all the drugs, smoked, swallowed, snorted, and shot up by all Americans from 1960 to 2000. 40 years of adulterated street drugs will get you some fucking angels, my friend. Angel shit. What about goblins? Did anybody believe in goblins? And zombies? Where the fuck are all the zombies? That's the trouble with zombies. They're unreliable. I say if you're going to buy that angel bullshit, you may as well go for the goblin zombie package as well. I get weary of this zero tolerance bullshit. It's annoying. Zero tolerance. To begin with, it's a fascist concept. It's what Hitler and Stalin practiced. It allows for no exceptions or compassion of any kind. All is black and white, no gradations. But even more important, it doesn't solve anything. The use of such a slogan simply allows whichever company, school, or municipality is using it to claim they're doing something about a problem, when in fact, nothing is being done at all, and the problem is being ignored. It's a cosmetic non-solution designed to impress simpletons. Whenever you hear the phrase zero tolerance, remember, someone is bullshitting you.
We're Consolidated International, and we might be looking for you. Are you one of those submissive people who show up, punch in, put out, pitch in, punch out, clean up, head home, throw up, turn in, sack out, and shut up? That's what we need. People we can keep in line. We just might have a place for you. Consolidated International. People making things so people have things to do things to other people with. Channel 7 recognizes its obligation to provide equal time to viewers who disagree with its editorial policy. Here, then, with an editorial reply, is Dr. Stephen Wanker, a clinical psychologist. Dr. Wanker speaks as a private citizen.
Thank you. Are these Channel 7 people kidding? Huh? What kind of crap are they trying to pull? Did you hear that shit they said last week about the budget? Jesus Christ, I couldn't believe it. What kind of assholes do they think we are? And they were always acting so self-righteous, like they know what's good for us and we're too stupid to think. I get tired listening to this shit. How about you, huh? Fuck these people. Who do they think they are with their goddamn three-piece suits and their fancy eyeglasses? And by the way, you know how long it takes to get one of these goddamn editorial replies on the air? 3 fucking years! 3 years ago I started asking to do this shit. They kept saying, well, we're not sure you're stable enough to be allowed on the air. And I said, stable? What are you fucking people, crazy? I'm as stable as the next cocksucker. I said to him, bend over and I'll give you something stable. Fortunately, they were able to recognize the logic of my argument, and here I am. But you know what I found out these assholes can do? They can cut you off the air if they want to. For instance, if they don't like what you're saying, they can just fucking
That was Stephen Wanker, a clinical psychologist. Tune in to Channel 7 tomorrow night for another editorial reply, as school teacher Howard Boudreau delivers an opinion titled, What's All This Phony Bullshit About Drunk Driving? And later in the week, don't miss Mayor Cosmo Drelling as he addresses another important issue, What's So Bad About Slavery? Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We now join Blowjobs of the Rich and Famous in progress.
Remember, kids, Mr. Policeman is your friend. Always cooperate with him. Mr. Policeman wants to help you, so you must help Mr. Policeman.
Don't forget, if you refuse to cooperate, Mr. Policeman will beat you to death, especially if you're not white. I'm not a person who thinks he can have it all, but I certainly feel that with a bit of effort and guile, I should be able to have more than my share. You know, it would be fun to have a set of twins and name them Dumbo and Goofy, and then just sit back and see how their personalities develop. I bet they'd really enjoy going to school. I'd like to point out that during the 20th century, white, God-fearing, predominantly Christian Europe produced Lenin, Stalin, Franco, Hitler, and Mussolini. I've never seen a homeless guy with a bottle of Gatorade. True fact. In 1733, the Russian army had a treatment for soldiers who suffered severe homesickness. At the first sign of the condition, they buried the soldier alive. True fact. Purina now has a cat food made especially for cats who live indoors. Indoor cat food for indoor cats. Meanwhile, I'm sure you're aware that some human beings have no food at all. If you vote once, you're considered a good citizen. If you vote twice, you face 4 years in jail. In this country, alcohol is hardly ever seen as a drug problem. Instead, we think of it as more of a driving problem. If I had been in charge of reorganizing the government's security agencies into a homeland defense organization, I would have divided the responsibilities into 2 agencies. The Bureau of What the Fuck Was That? And the Department of What the Fuck Are We Gonna Do Now? Euphemisms. It's a whole new language. Euphemistic language turns up in many areas of American life in a variety of situations. Not all euphemisms are alike, but they have one thing in common. They obscure meaning rather than enhancing it. They shade the truth, but they exist for various reasons. Sometimes they simply replace a word that makes people uncomfortable. For instance, the terms white meat, dark meat, and drumstick came into use because in Victorian times people didn't like to mention certain body parts. No one at the dinner table really wanted to hear Uncle Herbert say, "Never mind the thighs, Margaret. Let me have one of those nice juicy breasts." It would have made them uncomfortable. And at the same time, for the same reason, belly became stomach. But even stomach sounded too intimate, so they began saying tummy. It's actually a bit sad. I first became aware of euphemisms when I was 9 years old. I was in the living room with my mother and my Aunt Lil when I mentioned that Lil had a mole on her face. My mother was quick to point out that Lil didn't have a mole, she had a beauty mark. That confused me because, looking at Lil, the beauty mark didn't seem to be working. And it confused me further because my Uncle John also had a brown thing on his face, and it was clearly not a beauty mark. And so on that day, I discovered that on some people, what appeared to be moles were actually beauty marks. And as it turned out, they were the same people whose laugh lines looked a lot like crow's feet. By the way, that whole beauty mark scam worked so well that some women routinely began using eyebrow pencils to apply fake beauty marks, a fake mole being something no self-respecting woman would ever think of giving herself. Somehow I can't imagine Elizabeth Taylor turning to Joan Crawford and saying, "Lend me your eyebrow pencil, Joni. I'm going to put a fake mole on my face." By the way, it was only a few years after the Aunt Lil incident that I took comfort in the fact that some people apparently thought my ugly pimples were nothing more than minor skin blemishes. Another role euphemisms play is to simply put a better face on things, to dress up existing phrases that sound too negative. Non-profit became not-for-profit, because non-profit sounded too much as though someone didn't know what they were doing. Not-for-profit makes it clear that there was never any intention of making a profit in the first place. But some words that are euphemized aren't even vaguely negative. They're just considered too ordinary. For that reason, many things that used to be free are now complimentary. Asking the hotel clerk if the newspapers are free makes you sound like a mooch. But are the newspapers complimentary? Allows you to retain some small bit of dignity. This is the reason some hotels offer their guests complimentary continental breakfasts, while others give their customers free donuts. If you're one who would enjoy a closer look at euphemisms, you'll find a number of sections in the book that will interest you. I broke the euphemisms into segments because they play such a large and varied role in American speech. And I call it the new language because it's certainly new to me. I know I didn't grow up with it. And that's my larger point, that it's gotten worse over time. There were probably a few early signs I noticed, but I knew the problem was getting serious when I began to hear ordinary people refer to ideas as concepts. Hello, we're the ones who control your... It came from out of the sky. I find it discouraging and a bit depressing when I notice the unequal treatment afforded by the media. I don't understand these people who call themselves spiritual advisors. Continuing this little review of the language of the elected, it seems that linguistically politicians hit their truest stride when they find themselves in trouble. At times like these, the explanations typically begin with a single word. Continuing this little review of the language of the elected, relations jujitsu, he says, "We're trying to get to the bottom of this." We, suddenly, he's on the side of the law. We're trying to get to the bottom of this so we can get the facts out to the American people. Nice. The American people. Always try to throw them in. It makes it sound as if you actually care. As the stakes continue to rise, our hero now makes a subtle shift and says, "I'm willing to trust in the fairness of the American people." Clearly he's trying to tell us something, that there may just be a little fire causing all the smoke. But notice, he's still at the "I have nothing to hide" stage. But then, slowly, "I'm willing to trust in the fairness of the American people" progresses to "There is no credible evidence." And before long, we're hearing the very telling, "No one has proven a thing." Now, if things are on track in this drama, and the standard linguistic path of the guilty is being followed faithfully, "no one has proven a thing" will precede the stage when our hero begins to employ that particularly annoying technique, ask yourself questions and then answer them. Did I show poor judgment? Yes. Was there inappropriate behavior? Yes. Do I wish this never happened? Of course. But did I break the law? That's not the issue. The calendar is marching, however, and it soon becomes clear that our friend is most likely quite guilty indeed. We know this because now he shifts into that sublime use of the passive voice. Mistakes were made. The beauty of "mistakes were made" is that it doesn't really identify who made them. You're invited to think what you wish. Bad advice? Poor staff work? Voodoo curse? But it's too late. "Mistakes were made" quickly becomes "eventually I will be exonerated," which then morphs into "I have faith in the American judicial system." And the progression ends with that plaintive cry, "Whatever happened to innocent until proven guilty?" Whatever happened to innocent until proven guilty? Well, he's about to find out. Eventually, in full retreat and federal custody, he shuffles off in his attractive orange jumpsuit and can be heard muttering that most modern of mea culpas, "I just want to put this thing behind me and get on with my life." And to emphasize how sincere he is, he announces, "I'm taking responsibility for my actions." How novel. Imagine taking responsibility. He says it as though it were a recently developed technique. Whenever I hear that sort of thing on the news, I always want to ask one of these "I'm taking responsibility for my actions" people whether or not they'd be willing to take responsibility for my actions. You know, gambling debts, paternity suits, outstanding warrants. Can you help me out here, pal? Regarding this whole "put this thing behind me" idea in general, here's what I'd like to do. I'd like to I want to put this thing behind me and get on with my life, thing behind me and get on with my life. May I repeat that for you? I want to put this thing behind me and get on with my life, thing behind me and get on with my life. I think one of the problems in this country is that too many people are screwing things up, committing crimes, and then getting on with their lives. What is really needed for public officials who shame themselves is ritual suicide, harakiri. like those Japanese business executives who mismanage corporations into bankruptcy. Never mind the lawyers and the public relations and the press conferences. Get that big knife out of the kitchen drawer and do the right thing. To take up a thread from an earlier section of this Politico-Lingo trilogy, we noted at the time the fact that most politicians operate under the delusion that what they're doing is serving the nation. Of course, if they really feel this way, they're more than simply misinformed. They're obviously not playing with a full bag of jacks. So, citizens, a question. Do you think it's at all possible that these politicians whose judgment is so faulty that they actually believe they're serving the nation might be expected to indulge occasionally in some, exaggerated patriotism? Huh? What do you think? Maybe? Huh? Well, fans, it's not just possible, it's downright inevitable. And should they be so indulging themselves on the 4th of July, you'll want to be sure to have hip boots and a shovel handy, because brown stuff is going to be piling up at an alarming rate. And I suggest you shovel fast, because your elected heroes will be squeezing every last ounce of counterfeit patriotism out of their blood-starved brains. And so, as you see them rushing madly across the landscape, pushing all the buttons marked red, white, and blue, be on the alert for phrases such as Old Glory, Main Street, the Stars and Stripes, the Heartland, all across this great land of ours, from Maine to California, and of course, on American soil. And don't forget all those freedom-loving people around the world who look to us as a beacon of hope. Those, I assume, would be the ones we haven't bombed lately. And you'd also better be ready to be reminded over and over that you live in a country that somehow fancies itself leader of the free world. Got that? Leader of the free world. I don't know when we're going to retire that stupid shit, but personally, I've heard it quite long enough. 'Cause what exactly is the free world anyway? I guess it would depend on what you consider the non-free world. And I can't find a clear definition of that, can you? Where is that? Russia? China? For Christ's sakes, Russia has a better mafia than we do now. And China is pirating Lion King DVDs and selling dildos on the internet. They sound pretty free to me. Here are some more jingoistic variations you need to be on the lookout for. The greatest nation on earth, the greatest nation in the history of the world, and the most powerful nation on the face of the earth. That last one is usually thrown in just before we bomb a bunch of brown people, which is every couple of years. And bombing brings me to the language used by politicians when referring to our armed forces. Now, normally, during peacetime, politicians will refer to members of the military as our young men and women around the world. But since we're so rarely at peace for more than 6 months at a time, during wars, Senator Patriot and his colleagues are fully prepared to raise the stakes. By the way, don't you just love that word colleagues? It makes them sound so, legitimate. And so it is that in times of combat, our young men and women around the world quickly become our brave young fighting men and women stationed halfway around the world in places whose names they can't pronounce. And for added emotional impact, they may also mention that these military folks spend a lot of time wondering if they'll ever see their loved ones again. That one gets people right in the belly button. And should the speaker be going for maximum emotional effect, he will deliver the above passage, substituting sons and daughters for men and women. And isn't that reference, places whose names they can't pronounce, a lovely little piece of subtle racism? That's an all-American red meat bonus they throw in for you. Here's another way politicians express their racist geographic chauvinism. Young men and women stationed in places the average American can't find on a map. I've always thought it was amusing and a bit out of character for a politician to go out of his way to point out the limited amount of intelligence possessed by the American people, especially since his job security depends on that very same limitation. It would also appear to contradict that other well-traveled and inaccurate standby. The American people are a lot smarter than they're given credit for. Amazingly, politicians have mastered the art of uttering those words with a perfectly straight face, even though the proposition is stated precisely backward.
Judging from the results of focus groups, polls, and election returns that I've seen, and watching the advertising directed at Americans, I'd say the American people are a lot dumber than they're given credit for. As one example, just look at the individuals they keep sending to their state houses and to Washington to represent them. Look also at what they've done to their once beautiful country and its once beautiful landscape. Wrapping up this modest review of patriotic political language, I think it's safe to conclude that the degree of a politician's insincerity can best be measured by how far around the world our soldiers are and whether or not any of them is able to pronounce the name of the place, and whether or not their neighbors back home can find it on a map. No part of American life that hasn't been soiled by the new, softer, artificial language. It's everywhere. When you travel, you notice it in the hotel business, or, as they prefer to think of themselves now, the hospitality industry. And by the way, hotels are one more place where you'll run into job title inflation. There was a time in a hotel when you checked in with the desk clerk. Now he's the front desk agent. When he answers the phone, he becomes guest services. I guess it's only fair. Everyone else in the hotel has been upgraded. The bellhop has somehow become a luggage assistant, and he claims to work in luggage services. The maids have been upgraded several times over the years. Cleaning woman, maid, housekeeper, now they're room attendants. And on the subject of rooms, depending on where you're staying, room service is likely to be called in-room dining or private dining. One brochure I read called it your private dining experience. Pretentiousness. Never underestimate the role pretension plays when it comes to creating euphemistic language. Here's another example of it. At one hotel where I stayed, the restaurant was temporarily located on the lower level. I was told the reason was that they were undergoing restaurant enhancement. Okay? The concierge actually uttered that phrase. Not remodeling, restaurant enhancement. And he said it as if it was something people say all the time. By the way, I shouldn't have to remind you that that lower level he referred to was once called the basement. I guess I don't really mind the phrase lower level. At least it's descriptive. Although it is the comparative form and not an absolute. Lower than what? It also bothers me when they tell me the gym is located on level 3. Level 3 is just plain old pretentiousness. And I wish the hotels would make up their minds on what to call the gym. It's been everything. Gym, fitness center, exercise room, health club, spa. God, spa! Used to be you had to go to Europe to find a spa. Now any place that has a sink and more than 3 towels is a fucking spa. And one more thing about hotels. A lot of them have replaced the do not disturb signs with signs that say, privacy, please. Seems like a small thing, but there's a difference here that's worth noting. Do not disturb is assertive. It's strong. Do not disturb. It means go away. Not all the political manipulation of language is done by the big bad politicians. A lot of it comes from people who think of themselves as good and virtuous. The politically active. Activists. As opposed, I guess, to pacifists, who should not be confused with pacifists, who are, after all, quite often activists. Let's start with faith-based, which was chosen by right-wing holy people to replace the word religious in political contexts. In other words, they've conceded that religion has a bad name. I guess they figured people worry about religious fanatics, but no one's ever heard of a faith-based fanatic. And by the way, none of the Bush religious fanatics will admit this, but the destruction of the World Trade Center was a faith-based initiative. A fundamentalist Muslim faith-based initiative. Different faith, but hey, we're all about diversity here. The use of faith-based is just one more way the Bush administration found to bypass the Constitution. They knew Americans would never approve of government-promoted religious initiatives, but faith-based? Hey, what's the problem? The term faith-based is nothing more than an attempt to slip religion past you when you're not thinking, which is the way religion has always slipped past you. It deprives you of choice. Choice being another word the political speech manipulators find extremely useful. School choice.
and the more sophisticated version, parental choice, are code phrases that disguise the right wing's plan to use government money to finance religious education. If you hear the word voucher, watch out for the religious right. Again, though, be alert for the more sophisticated term for vouchers, opportunity scholarships. It's impossible to mention the word choice without thinking of the language that has come out of the abortion wars. Back when those battles were first being joined, the religious fanatics realized that anti-abortion sounded negative and lacked emotional power, so they decided to call themselves pro-life. Pro-life not only made them appear virtuous, it had the additional advantage of suggesting their opponents were anti-life, and therefore pro-death. They also came up with a lovely variation designed to get you all warm inside, pro-family. Well, the left wing didn't want to be seen as either anti-life or pro-death, and they knew pro-abortion wasn't what they needed, so they decided on pro-choice. That completed the name game and gave the world the now classic struggle, pro-choice versus pro-life. The interesting part is that the words life and choice are not even opposites, but there they are, hanging out together, bigger than life. And by the way, during this period of name-choosing, thanks to one more touch of left-wing magic, thousands of abortionists' offices were slowly and mysteriously turning into family planning clinics. And on the subject of those places, I think the left really ought to do something about this needlessly emotional phrase, back-alley abortions. We don't want to go back to the days of back-alley abortions. Please. It's over-descriptive. How many abortions ever took place in back alleys? Or, in places where the entrance was through a back alley. Long before Roe versus Wade, when I was a young man, every abortion I ever paid for took place in an ordinary doctor's office in a medical building. We came in through the front door and took the elevator, the three of us. Of course, as we were leaving, the elevator carried a lighter load. Then there's the fetus unborn child argument. Even leaving aside personal feelings, the semantics of this alone are kind of fun to unravel. To my way of thinking, whatever it is, if it's unborn, it's not a child. A child has already been born. That's what makes it a child. A fetus is not a child because it hasn't been born yet. That's why it's called a fetus. You can call it an unborn fetus if you want. It's redundant. But you can't call it an unborn child because, not to belabor this, to be a child, it has to be born. Remember? The word unborn may sound wonderful to certain people, but it doesn't tell you anything. You could say a Volkswagen is unborn, but what would it mean? The fanatics have another name for fetuses. They call them the preborn. Now we're getting creative. If you accept preborn, I think you'd have to say that at the moment of birth, we go instantly from being preborn to being pre-dead. Makes sense, doesn't it? Technically, we're all pre-dead. Although, if you think about it even harder, the word pre-dead probably would best be reserved for describing stillborn babies, the post-born pre-dead. By the way, I think the reason conservatives want all these babies to be born is that they simply like the idea of birth. That's why so many of them have been born again. They can't get enough of it. Here's some more left-wing nonsense, this time from the environmentalists, the folks who gave us the rainforest. Save the rainforest. They decided to call it that because they needed to raise money, and they knew no one would give them money to save a jungle. Save the jungle doesn't sound right. Same with swamp. Save the swamp. Not gonna work. Swamp became wetland. Nicer words, sounds more fragile. Save the wetlands. Send money. But I think the environmentalists still have their work cut out for them when it comes to global warming and the greenhouse effect. As I see it, these terms are far too pleasant for people to get all worked up about. For one thing, global is too all-embracing for Americans. It's not selfish enough. Isn't globalization that thing that's been stealing our jobs? Global doesn't make it. And warming is such a nice word. Who wouldn't want a little warming? Similarly, greenhouse effect will never do. A greenhouse is full of plants and flowers, full of life and growth. Green equals life. House equals shelter. The greenhouse effect sounds like something that gives you life and shelter and growth. You're never going to turn something like that into a villain. And the environmentalists have another language problem, this one concerning nuclear energy. Meltdowns. They like to warn us about meltdowns. But a meltdown sounds like fun, doesn't it? Sounds like some kind of cheese sandwich. Would you like some fries with that meltdown? Here's some more of the distorted language of political persuasion. Conservatives oppose gun control. Liberals know control is a negative word, so they call it gun safety. That's about what you'd expect, but it's hard to find words to describe the following distortion. Some of the pro-gun people are referring to gun control as victim disarmament. Isn't that stunning? Victim disarmament. It takes your breath away. Like a gun. Liberals call it affirmative action. Conservatives are less positive. They refer to government-mandated quotas, racial preferences, and unfair set-asides. Rich Republicans want to keep their money in the family, and so the Republican Party began to call the inheritance tax, a pro-tax term, the estate tax, a neutral term, which they later changed to the death tax, an anti-tax term. When liberals talk about spending, they call it investing or funding. Funding means spending money. We need to do more to fund education. On the other side of the ledger, when Republicans need to raise taxes, they call it revenue enhancement. The energy criminals now refer to oil drilling as oil exploration. Instead of Mobil and Exxon, they'd rather you picture Lewis and Clark. When the original Enron story was developing, Bush's people referred to the crimes as violations. They said a review might be necessary, but not an investigation. So I guess if the other guys do it, it's a crime that should be investigated. But if your guys do it, it's a violation that should be reviewed. Liberals call it global warming. Conservatives call it climate change. If you want the individual to sound shady and suspicious, you call him an Iraqi. If you want to upgrade him a bit, he becomes an Iraqi American. If you're trying to clean him up completely, you call him an American citizen of Iraqi descent. When people came to this country primarily from Europe, they were called immigrants and refugees. As they began arriving from Latin America and the Caribbean, we started calling them aliens. Some of them are here illegally. Those in this country who sympathize with that group don't call them illegal aliens. They refer to them as undocumented workers or guest workers. Sometimes they're identified by the purely descriptive term, the newly arrived. Most favored nation trade status was considered too positive a term for China, so it was decided instead to call it normal trade relations. Aside from the language, there's no difference between the two policies. The Nazis referred to the extermination of the Jews as special action. In their version, the Jews were not killed. They were resettled, evacuated, or transferred, and the dead were referred to as the no longer relevant. In Palestine, Arabs refer to the areas Jews have taken over as occupied territories. Jews call them disputed areas. The Israelis call their assassinations of Palestinian leaders focused thwartings, pinpoint elimination, and preventive measures. At one time in Iraq, Saddam Hussein called the hostages he was holding his guests. Countries we used to call rogue nations are now referred to as nations of concern, so we can talk to them without insulting them outright. But as a result of bad behavior, North Korea has been downgraded from a state of concern to a rogue state. Likewise, failed nations are now called messy states. Underdeveloped countries have also been upgraded. They're now developing nations. And finally, during the election that defeated Manuel Noriega in Panama, there were groups of thugs that wandered around beating and killing people and looting stores. They called themselves dignity battalions. If you enjoyed my earlier description of my new system for wishing people a nice day, perhaps you'll be interested in the following equally innovative method I employ in similar situations. The difference is that this attempt to relieve the tedium of short exchanges involves the replies I give as opposed to the good wishes I offer. As an example, when someone asks me how I am, I try to make my answer as specific as possible. I'm not the type to toss off a casual, "I'm fine." I take care to express my exact condition, and thanks to my creative flair, I can choose from a number of options. If I'm in a self-protective mood, a simple guardedly well often does the job. I find also tentatively keen doesn't give too much away. Of course, if there's the least bit of doubt, I simply rely on my old standby, the ever-cautious, "I'm fairly well, comparatively speaking."
I'm happy to tell you there's very little in this world that I believe in. Listening to the comedians who comment on political, social, and cultural issues, I notice that most of their material reflects kind of an underlying belief that somehow things were better once, and with just a little effort we could set them right again. They're looking for solutions and rooting for particular results, and I think that limits the tone and substance of what they say. They're talented and funny people, but they're really nothing more than cheerleaders attached to a specific wished-for outcome. I don't feel so confined. I frankly don't give a fuck how it all turns out in this country, or anywhere else for that matter. I think the human game was up a long time ago when the high priests and traders took over. And now we're just playing out the string. And that is, of course, precisely what I find so amusing. The slow circling of the drain by a once promising species and the sappy, ever more desperate belief in this country that there is actually some sort of an American dream which has merely been misplaced. The decay and disintegration of this culture is astonishingly amusing if you're emotionally detached from it. And I've always viewed it from a safe distance, knowing I don't belong. Doesn't include me, it never has. No matter how you care to define it, I do not identify with the local group. Planet, species, race, nation, state, religion, party, union, club, association, neighborhood improvement committee. I have no interest in any of it. I love and treasure individuals as I meet them. I loathe and despise the groups they identify with and belong to. So if you hear something in this book that sounds like advocacy of a particular political point of view, please reject the notion. My interest in issues is merely to point out how badly we're doing, not to suggest a way we might do better. Don't confuse me with those who cling to hope. I enjoy describing how things are. I have no interest in how they ought to be. I think many years ago an advanced civilization intervened with us genetically and gave us just enough intelligence to develop dangerous technology, but not enough intelligence to use it wisely. Then they sat back to watch the fun, kind of like a human zoo. And you know what? They're getting their money's worth. I think many years ago... Hello, we're the ones who control your lives. We make the decisions that affect all of you. Isn't it interesting to know that those who run your lives would have the nerve to tell you about it in this manner? Suffer, you fools. We know everything you do, and we know where you go. What do you think the cameras are for? And the global positioning satellites? And the social security numbers? You belong to us. And it can't be changed. Sign your petitions, walk your picket lines, bring your lawsuits, cast your votes, and write those stupid letters to whomever you please. You won't change a thing. Because we control your lives, and we have plans for you. Go back to sleep.